talk about what we would like to talk about. Uh-oh. Hi, Kathy.
All right. So, hi, Kathy. Thank you for joining us this evening.
Yeah.
And hi, Maggie. Thank you for representing District 7 and being here with us as well. And Becca, hello.
How's everyone doing?
Oh, busy.
That's very true. And Maggie, with a young one at home, I'm sure you're quite busy.
Yeah, he's actually asleep next to me right now. So if I'm not super chatty, that's probably why. But Jolan should be jumping on here in just a minute.
All right, great. Thank you.
I'll give you a
Hi,
little peek at him because he's cute.
Oh, look.
Oh, the little baby. Yes,
Enjoy
daycare.
those quiet moments.
That's what I hear from all you people with teenagers.
That's
Well,
right.
he's a great baby, but I'm sure he'll be a hellion when he's a teenager for payback.
Well, let me just say that as the parent to teenage boys, I've had a very interesting time at it. I wouldn't change it for the world. And there are moments when I'm like, why? But it's all worth it.
I can see that. Well, it's been a blast so far, even the rough moments. So
Yeah. Well, wait till he can speak back to you. That's when it really gets rough. When I have a voice.
And he's going to be able to speak German, which I don't speak well. So he's going to have an ability to go behind my back.
We've also got Heidi and Elizabeth. Good evening. Councilman Clark, good evening. Chelsea, good evening.
Oh, good. Hi, Chelsea. Nice to see you. So it's just right at 6 o'clock, so we'll give folks a few more minutes to get logged in. So Kathy, I'm kind of curious. I see the painting I see 4 figures. I don't want to assume that I know that they're women, but it looks really cool. What is that?
It's a batik my daughter had gotten from Uganda when she went to visit it. So it is showing 4 women kind of dancing and living the life in their community.
Nice. I think we've always seen it, but I never thought to ask you about it before. Well, somebody's awake. All right, we'll give things just a couple more minutes here. Let folks get signed in, and we'll get started.
Do you know if he'll be expecting Councilwoman Torres?
My understanding is that Councilwoman Torres and Sandoval are both on a work-related trip and may not be able to join us this evening.
Okay.
But we do have, I believe, Councilman Clark is present. So, thank you, Councilman, for joining us this evening. We really appreciate it.
Good to see everybody. Yo.
Looks like we've got a new steering committee member, everybody. Hello there, little one.
He's already been to a council meeting and lots of community meetings. He's very civically minded already.
All right. The future mayor. Just invest in bike lanes.
Eugene, I'll send you a picture of him on his bike. We now can ride to and from daycare. So we're quite a sight to behold on the Daycare Express bike that we ride.
Awesome. That's great. And by then it won't be e-bikes. It'll be sort of like some sort of pressure floating device of some sort.
Real hoverboards by then.
That's right. Chala, it's great to see you. Thank you for joining us.
We've also got Mo and Yvonne. Thank you all for joining.
Hi, everyone. Did Teams do an update? Like, I'm able to see everyone's faces at the same time for the first time. Maybe that's just
me too. I was thinking the same thing, although I can't see everybody.
Or, yeah, as many tiles fit on the screen. It's great.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yvonne, are you a grandma? Newly today?
Not yet. I'm taking the time out of this precious time scale to meet with you all, so I hope I can go first.
Oh, sure. We can make that happen.
She's a high-risk pregnancy, and she's really having a hard time. She's been in labor for 24 hours now, so
Oh my
I'm
goodness.
sad. But thank you, Elizabeth. I'll let you know the good news, everyone, soon.
Stay
All right.
tuned. How kind of you to be here with all of that going on.
I was going to say, maybe even during the time of this call.
I know, right? Maybe.
We're planning your future.
Yeah. Oh, Eugene, wait a minute. Let's hold this meeting so I can get him to speak, because he wants to tell you about the future of Valverde.
All right. I love it. Well, it's 6:05. Why don't we go ahead and get started? And Councilman Clark, I don't know if you had prepared any words or would like to say anything to get us started, but I do want to acknowledge your presence and offer you the screen, if you will.
Oh, well, thank you. No, I don't have anything prepared. I'm just excited to be here to listen and to hear. And I just want to say thank you to everyone for all of the time and hours, even in the midst of waiting for babies and all of the other breaks that you're taking from your life to be so involved in this process. It really does make a difference and it really does matter. And we as a city are in your debt. So thank you for that. And that's all I got for right now.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. And I also want to acknowledge and recognize the number of months, now years, that everyone on this call has put into this process. And it's because of everyone's hard work and dedication that I think we've gotten to this really important and key milestone. One of the reasons why we did decide to go ahead and hold this meeting this evening is because we really wanted to make sure that you all felt comfortable with where we are in the process. And have a conversation about where the plan as the draft exists, and to also talk about the opportunities to continue to craft and shape the direction of the plan, and to make sure that everyone is more or less on the same page with where we are in the process, because we are not yet finished. We are at a really critical and key milestone where we do hope that we can share the plan with the broader public, because you all have had a chance to see and read and digest the plan in its current state. Yet our broader public hasn't had a chance to really hear from us in about a year, if not more than that now. And so as we think about additional content that many of you or some of you have expressed a desire to see articulated in the plan, we also want to make sure that when we do address some of the initial feedback from the steering committee, that we are also doing so with the broader community's input, because we have to be diligent and sort of responsible with the time that we have and the resources that we have available to us. And so really wanted to make sure that we had an opportunity to have that conversation with all of you who are present this evening, so that we know exactly what lies before us, what's in front of us, and how we can continue to move and develop and craft this process. So I wanted to really start by acknowledging that some of you who are present this evening did reach out when you saw the email from last week, stating that we had made some of the changes, but not everything has been yet adopted or incorporated into the draft. And while we do hope that we can solicit broader input and get a better gauge of the 6 neighborhoods and the overall sentiment of the plan. We also wanted to make sure that we did lay out how your direct input can be addressed over the coming weeks, while we are also hopefully seeking input from those who haven't been engaged in this process at the same level that each of you has. So I thought we could potentially spend the first 10 or so minutes, 15 minutes or so, hearing from those of you who have reached out to us through either the council offices or directly with some of your thoughts about the draft as it stands in its current state. So Elizabeth, I know that you were one of the first folks to communicate with us. And so I thought I would give you the floor for a couple of minutes here to perhaps share with the broader stakeholder committee some of your initial thoughts and responses to the draft as it stands today.
Sure, I'll be super brief because but first I want to acknowledge that with very short turnaround, right when the Sun Valley Rising night market was happening, when Valverde was having an event on Saturday, and there was a lot going on, Jean and Heidi and Adriana and Yvonne and Kathy all were in communication with me, and Heidi and I spent time writing, but because it was fast moving, I was careful not to sign everybody else. I CC'd people who were in conversation with that, but I didn't want to sign people's name to it because it was quickly gathered from many folks. Before I turn it over to others who can speak, I just want to name that a concern about releasing it now is that there's some readability and confusion elements that I hadn't really noticed and Heidi hadn't really noticed before, but in the month and a week or so while we were waiting to hear back about our April 9th meeting, some of those questions showed up, particularly like there's the numbering system is super confusing. And I think it would be kind of obfuscate the recommendations for the general release. Like it was hard for me to follow, but like we've got 60, I think, planning recommendations in the 4 different categories, and then like Q15 as a general quality of life policy recommendation 15. There are, for each section, there are recommendations that are specific to the neighborhoods. And but like Q Barnum 15 doesn't pertain to like quality of life 15 policy. It's like renumbered sequentially, and like stuff like that is just very hard to track. I was scrolling away back and forth trying to see how those things align, and so just looking at ease of public participation when we bring it out to a much greater audience that may have exceptionally less willingness to read through a 280-page document and try to negotiate it. And then the second thing that came to significant concern was that the implementation section is 3 pages out of the 280 pages. And perhaps implementation is something yet to be, maybe that's the next step. Maybe it's not something we're doing right now, but the way it reads right now, it's very alarming how like undeveloped it is. And given that like, we've spent a lot of time looking at the 1991 Valverde plan. And a lot of those areas did have accountability, like who was responsible for moving those things forward. And they still didn't happen, but it was at least a way to be able to like, oh, the park hasn't been named. Well, that was the neighborhood association, the Parks Department. And now we're working together 30 years later. So, but without any of that in the plan and making it seem like it didn't say like to be TBD. It looked like that was what the draft was. And there was a reference to performance metrics, and yet there were no performance metrics anywhere to be found. And so I think that that is ultimately like having the quality of life section have quality of life performance metrics that would be incorporated for implementation purposes and accountability long term. That may be coming, but it was concerning that it's presented as a draft and it just read like, oh, like all of this stuff has no teeth. And it was alarming that the things that did show up in there for implementation just looked like business as usual Blueprint Denver and didn't capture any of the richness that had been in the other plan or any of the contextually specific elements. So if Jean, I see Jean there. Jean also brought some stuff that I'd like her to talk about, particularly about the service of helping to adjust, like for the past 15 years, Denver had a common template for neighborhood plans that were designed around another issue. And now we have gentrification and climate change. But Jean, can't tell if you're there, but could pass it over to you.
Hi, I am here, but trying to do a million things and still be part of the conversation. I think our thought, just with even the flipping it, and I think you picked up on that, and that's one of the reasons why we're glad that we're aligned on that. Is that it's not just the Nest neighborhoods, I think, that have this quality of life issue and need, but really I've been to 3 or 4 of these, these planning efforts. And I think that there's a little bit of that going on. Maybe it looks a little different in different neighborhoods, but I think everybody is kind of really wanting to look at the quality of life. And certainly as climate action is becoming more and more a priority, and, in mobility, I think it just, a new template would resonate with a lot of folks beyond just the Nest neighborhoods. So I was glad that, you understood that. But there's probably some more work that needs to be done to really kind of create that. And I think that, because it is so critical really for our neighborhoods, it's such a critical issue in terms of repair and restoration that, we'll bite the bullet on that, and hopefully put in some of the time, to get this template so that it is something that really resonates more for the future direction than just a template to tell developers, how to build. So.
Great, thank you for that. I appreciate that setup, that background, that additional information. Heidi, you were mentioned as a person who helped sort of inform the information that came our way. Is there anything you'd like to add before we go into discussing those topics?
Yeah, and I think just should Yvonne go soon for the time for the baby? And then I'm happy to go after her. Yes.
And thank you very much. That's a great point. Yvonne, if you'd like to add to this conversation, please do.
Well, I humbly come before you, and I have the utmost admiration for all of you because I feel like this is unprecedented. I've lived in this neighborhood for 60 years, and these talks, CASR, Denver Moves Everyone, Cloverleaf Project, DNA Metro Denver Alliance, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineering working on the river. I mean, these are huge things. And Denver is like, we're going to be a part of all of this. So I'm so excited. And I come to you with an open heart that you can, some of these things are tangible, things that we can work towards, because, you know, these caustic gases, we've got to do something about it, because they're not only damaging our neighborhoods and our children who play in these neighborhoods, but they're wreaking havoc on the environment. And so as we work together and you guys are you're making change. You're going to be in the news. I mean, you're going to be all over America. Look at what Denver did. They flipped it. They're not going to go by what the developer wants. They're going to go by what the neighborhoods want. So I implore you, and with an open heart, and so grateful for the great work we all are doing. Let's just keep tweaking this, because we're going to get there. And, you know, like Jean said, I mean, sometimes when we use the same old beat, we bounce, you know, to the same old drum, we forget, you know what, hey, there's a better way to do this. I mean, I love the city. I worked there 25 plus years. I love the city and county of Denver. I'm the greatest fan. But you know what? We got to do better. And we got to do better in this plan. And so please listen to us, please. And with that, I got to bounce. I got to go back to the hospital. I'm so sorry, but I love you guys. Please keep me in the loop. I'm definitely on board 150%. Thank you, Eugene, for this opportunity. And thank you to our wonderful representatives, our council people, and all of you. I just really appreciate all of you. Thank you.
Yvonne, thank you so
Ashley
much.
and the baby.
Yes, thank you so much. We really appreciate you. Good luck with everything, and we can't wait to hear how things turn out. So, Shala, you were another person sort of referenced in some of the communications to us, so I wanted to give you an opportunity to speak as well.
So I kind of have been looped in more recently, and the reason that I am getting more involved at this point is because of what Heidi and Elizabeth have really brought to attention in regards to the performance metrics piece and how that plays out. And so I think the email that was sent out this afternoon was really like a overview of a conversation between all of the neighborhoods and what the different concerns are. But I'll just speak in regards to Barnum and Barnum West. And really it comes down to my curiosity and wonder about what's possible in putting into this particular plan related to those performance metrics, so that when the larger development comes our way, because I really feel like Barnum is maybe the least unique in all the neighborhoods, in that we are characteristically residential with a little bit with the businesses kind of on the outskirts, and then some businesses that run in our downtown Barnum, which is First and Knox, which I love that part of the plan. We're so excited about that in the neighborhood. But really, truly, we know that it's all coming this way. And so we're kind of looking to the wisdom of the other neighborhoods and really wondering what is possible in guiding those performance metrics in regard to quality of life, so that we continue to direct development as it comes down the pike in our neighborhood that way, versus just what is possible based on a bottom line, if that makes sense.
That does, and I really appreciate you sharing that. And one of the things that we've tried to do is respond to the public feedback, y'all's feedback in particular, around some of those opportunities, like the downtown Barnum as an example. Is there anyone else that would like to speak before we sort of get into? Oh yeah, Heidi, thank you.
And I think all of us kind of want to speak a little bit, so not to, just so we have time for everyone to, because that email that came out was it was very abrupt, and it was, and as Elizabeth said, it was alarming. As we had, in our last meeting, we talked about moving, not just moving, but leading the plan, leading with the quality of life section. And that is so important to us. And that's really, for the past 3 years, that is what we have been stressing and talking about. And I love, I just want to mention that I do love that we have 6 neighborhoods together, and it's so that we can look at things in a more systemic, as a systems approach to planning. And we have, again, others have mentioned this great opportunity to work together to do something that's really meaningful for ourselves and future generations and the future of our neighborhoods in Denver. And so I think that that quality of life section and leading with it is so important, because that's where all of our efforts and all of our thoughts and all of our what we really want to see, and everything that we've been saying for 3 years, that's where it shows up the most. In the rest of the plan, there's some mobility stuff and some of the parks, and that stuff is good too, but it really shows up in the quality of life. And the second part, when we said lead with that, I think we really stressed also that means integrating it. And what we saw was a cut and paste. And I think that was the most alarming thing about it. And then it was just like, oh, okay. And now, this, now it's being advertised and it's being published everywhere, and I don't think it's ready for people to even understand or comprehend. And when I look at this, when I looked at the revised draft, nothing had changed other than the cut and paste. And that, I think that we are going to miss a serious opportunity if we do not lead and integrate with this. When we look at the implementation section, and I think we heard somewhere that section gets done later, but I think it really needs to be done now. How can people comment on something when they don't know how it's what the implementation is going to look like? So when we look at, when I look at that implementation section and I see that, the priorities, the list of maps that are, it's basically Blueprint Denver. And it is with some updated maps, and those maps are from I think primarily the land use section. And this is a great area where we can add the quality of life maps and lead with those, and not lead with what we've been saying, what we've been seeing in Blueprint Denver in our neighborhoods in the last 15 years, which we know does not work. It doesn't give us resilience. It has not created equity. It hasn't, created neighborhoods that are livable and enjoyable. We're being pushed out. We know what the issues are, right? And we know that doesn't work. So we cannot keep doing this. So I think that, there would be a great opportunity for those maps to actually be the maps in the quality of life section, where when we're talking about these areas, when we're talking about the Clover, where there is no, or just anywhere along the river in our manufacturing sections, there's no mention of there's a map on page, what is it, like 134 or something that, I love this one. Yeah, the environmental quality and climate resiliency recommendations, that is the map, not the map on page 34 that just shows developers like, here you go, here's where you can continue to extract and be predatory with your development plans. And that is just, it's all based, it's just like, okay, all they need to know is here's where you build your box and this is how high you build it. There's no mention of how we address the tree canopy, the heat islands, how we take care of our water quality basins. We never even mentioned that. I didn't even know we had water quality basins in our neighborhoods like that we, having that deep dive into those areas and to really talk about how we attract development that wants to be in relationship with our neighborhoods, with our transit centers, with these areas where we know, this isn't commentary on we don't want development. We want that kind of, we know we need that. We're a city, but we need that development to be in relationship. We don't want to attract people who, the first person that gets to the permit table gets to build whatever they want. And I don't like what we see, and I don't think the Barnum's going to look what, if that's what's coming, and I don't see how it wouldn't be. So I just really would love for us to be able to go to community and say, if we show them this, like that our communities are going to be based on these standards, that's a no-brainer. But as this plan sits now, I don't think it's really understood, and it's not really any different than anything else. And it doesn't feel like a neighborhood plan. It feels like a city plan. Thank you.
All right, I see Mo has her hand up as well as Kathy. Mo, would you like to go, or I'm not sure which of you, and then Jaime. But I know, Mo, we don't often hear from you very often, so would you like to go?
Yeah, I'm happy to share. And I think I just wanted to maybe make a suggestion for the group as we go into this conversation. And I so respect the time and the passion that all of my peers have put into reviewing the plan and providing feedback, and then also Eugene and Val and everyone else on your team. And I wonder, I think I feel for the city in walking away from these really rich discussions and needing to put those ideas on paper when we're sometimes talking about them at such a high level. And so I think the more in this conversation we can give specific examples, the better, just to provide that guidance and that like kind of narrower idea and clearer idea of what we envision in a finished product. So I think that, again, I so enjoy listening to our conversations, and would love to just maybe give Eugene and Val a little bit more. And I guess there are comments specifically on the plan, but it sounds like maybe those still have not been incorporated yet. So I'd love to hear some of those specifics, and just a way to maybe help us realize what we'd like, and to help Eugene and Val come back to the folks who are maybe making these modifications with some more tangible guidance.
Wonderful, thank you for that, Mo. Kathy, and then we'll go to Jaime after that.
Great, thank you for letting me have a little bit of time here. So I did want to point out that when we did include a letter that had some real specific sort of things that were bubbling up as real concerns. And I think when we left, now I can speak for myself, certainly on April 9th, the impression that I got is that, yes, we were going to look at quality of life as sort of the baseline, the foundational piece of this plan. And I think, as Heidi so accurately articulated, it's more of a cut and paste. It isn't the baseline we were hoping to see, the baseline that was going to carry the threads throughout the whole plan. That's going to be different for the whole city of Denver in approaching these neighborhood plans. The traditional approach is always the land use approach. What can be built? What is the zoning? How does it look like in opportunity areas? What's the development potential? And I think this plan was really trying to orient the city, especially as it relates to your goals that we have. We have a climate action goal. We have a mobility goal. We have an equity goal. We have equity listed as planning for equity in the front pages of this neighborhood plan, area plan, and yet the thread does not continue. And that is where the rubber meets the road, is if the thread continues that baseline of quality of life, so that we can clearly see those tenets that we are looking to have within the plan on how quality of life is impacted by the built environment, how quality of life is impacted on the lack of infrastructure or the improvements that need to be made of infrastructure. We've certainly mentioned time and time again about the industrial areas that are impacting Val Verde and Sun Valley, and are illustrated so clearly on the heat map that you have, where it shows not only these desert areas, basically, where there's no vegetation, but in fact causing more harm to the people that live there, in addition to the city in general, by having climate issues related to having that kind of a landscape, that we've tried articulating those pieces to it, but it doesn't seem like we're on the same page. I feel a lot of times we're talking about these quality of life issues, and I thought we had understanding of what we were trying to point to on April 9th, but I feel like we're disconnect. I feel like the disconnect is let's cut and paste and show quality of life as page 1, but we won't necessarily connect the dots on how that connects to the built environment, how it deals with gentrification and displacement. And so we've listed in this letter some of those specific concerns as it relates to the expansion of the industrial areas and how it needs to support sort of green jobs, or even ways to connect and disconnect some of that whole asphalt area with some more green space and complete streets. We've also talked about the River Sisters turquoise necklace as that kind of quality of life sort of section that interwovens the piece of how we can make it a more sustainable environment in these neighborhoods. Yet that's not really connected as far as the dots. And then we talk about displacement vulnerabilities, and it seems to be just a map. There is no sense of value of how upzoning, when we say we want to have 12 stories here on maps or 7 stories here on maps, we don't talk about upzoning, but the reality is that it will provide the gateway for the upzoning, and it will provide the gateway for displacement of more residents in our neighborhoods, like it is now with the current zoning that we have that is higher density, that has 5 stories, and that is proposed for 12 stories. So it's going to continue to ripple and rip through our neighborhoods with more gentrification and more displacement of residents. And this plan needs to recognize that, what that impact is, and not just say, well, if we have ADUs, that's going to solve it. And that's not the reality. We will see more displacement. And I believe the city needs to own that and recognize what that zoning does to neighborhoods and figure out some other ways and alternatives and solutions to get us there in a place where there's more balance. Okay. So I implore you to be looking at those things, and we can certainly write up more specific areas. And we certainly have done a lot of that in the chat. I don't know where that goes, but it's certainly, we've had a constant exchange, and in this virtual world, it makes it a little bit more challenging to have an understanding of the path forward where we both are at, neighborhood residents as well as city. But I would encourage you to really look at these sections that we outline in this letter, and we certainly can continue to make those more specific if we're not quite understanding what our story is that we want to see in this area plan. Right. You know, we certainly mentioned the mobility section of having green space connected. We have cultures that are natural attributes in all these neighborhoods, and yet we're not really trying to connect them all together to have it as a more of a green space, in addition to how it gets developed as a commercial green space kind of avenue. So I see that there's a lot of missing pieces still within this plan, as Heidi has mentioned, and as well as when we listed those different metrics and just the implementation plan, is that we're trying to work with you and wanting to be collaborative, but when we don't seem to get our message or our voices heard, it's very frustrating. Okay. And it's very frustrating to understand how we can support this plan when our voices aren't a part of the plan, or they're part of the small part of the plan.
All right.
So that's my concern.
Thank you for that, Kathy. I appreciate that. I want to go to Jaime, I want to go to Dan, and then I would like to sort of respond to some of the items that have been raised this evening. So Jaime.
Awesome. Well, I'll be quick because I think Kathy touched on a lot of things that I really wanted to hammer through, because I think what is being displayed or felt is that, you know, is how the goals and priorities of what this plan's expectations are. And when you list equity on there, it's like, you know, it's like having a land acknowledgement, but yet you don't do anything for the Native community to make a change, right? That's the best example I can give. And it's something that I don't feel like being from a redlined, vulnerable nest neighborhood. I don't know why they give us that name, but if it's not even a permanent type of thing, right? But it's been recognized, and I just don't think that, 20 years ago that was a recognized thing of the city, to know that, hey, you're in Villa Park, where while you're making this plan, you should really know that, you only certain, whatever. We all know the red line story. You told it to us. And so I just want to make sure that, those things, as well as I think that from every person from Barnum to Valverde, sorry, I'm getting a bad feed here. From Barnum to Valverde, I have, with these quality of life issues, I saw it last night on the dais with the city council. They're talking about like the Pepsi plant coming into places and of industrial area where it's perfectly fine. It's needed a variance or something. I didn't really watch the meeting. I just kind of saw what was on there, and it was about like, this electric full efficient, company coming into that area. And that's kind of listed, right? More commercial. But then when we talk about our other assets that we have here in these neighborhoods of plans, it's also the green space, the undeveloped space, the current, waterways that were neglected and have not been restored or repaired. And I think we're missing a huge opportunity here. I think a lot of things, even from preserving the traffic circle to not be for commercial use, like to let it be used for, like, to let us breathe again in these areas of this heat map next to the highway that, was brought through the valley, next to Fort Weld, where they told, are the first people here that, this is where they gathered and lied to them, right? Like, I don't want to be part of that story. And there's a lot of things that I think that weren't kind of in the same way responded to, as far as how we repair these areas that are assets, which is not money. It's about the space to be green and to let the river, the water retention areas, and the creeks and rivers that we reside in breathe again. We didn't choose 6th Avenue, the government did. And that was the best, greenest connecting part of this whole thing that we're working on now, that is also, a big point of issue. So I just wanted to make sure and mention that. I think Kathy touched on the other things I wanted to move forward. But I will thank you for the time.
Thank you for that, Jaime. And Dan, and then I would love an opportunity to sort of address some of the comments that have been mentioned this evening.
Well, hi, everybody. And I would just like to say that I am sitting here really impressed and blown away by the level of thought that is going into this plan, and the conversation is at its such, and the level of conversation, which is so high and impressively, people have really been thinking about this, and I love the fact that we're looking 25 years. It's a 25 years plan, so that people are really looking into the future. And I will say that I feel like Heidi has opened my eyes. Actually, I've had a lot of conversations with her to things that I really hadn't considered. And then there were also some like major, like flooding and other climate disaster events that really made me think that, yes, I mean, just picking up, which is also picking up on what I was just saying, like there are a lot of things to really draw on in this conversation that I think hopefully will establish a narrative. And I think that one of the things that if I've been learning more about, and that I think the world has been learning more about, is how important the narrative is. I mean, if you set the narrative, it's incredibly important to whatever it is that you're trying to achieve. I mean, for God's sakes, I mean, the Russians are trying to set the narrative in one way, and then you have all kinds of, that obviously there's, a lot of power exists in the narrative. And so the idea of the narrative and incorporating the narrative into of these goals. And then I think that one of the things that you can maybe try to do in this plan is to, like, I mean, when I've listened in and I've participated to some extent in the East Central planning process, and it's not nearly, just going back to that first point I was making, it's just not nearly as it's really about, they're just bickering honestly about small stuff and very specific things. Whereas there's something I think that really deserves working into the plan in a way that can make it make some meaningful difference in the next 25 years. So that's it.
Well, thank you for that. And thank you for each of you in the comments that you've shared. I know because all of you have spent so much time and energy invested in your communities, in this planning effort, and your voices and bringing different perspectives to this conversation. And I absolutely want to acknowledge that and hold that up, because I agree with you, all of you, in that I think that the West Area Plan is unique. It's unique in the conditions of the 6 neighborhoods. It's unique in the opportunity to redefine the conversation as it relates to your communities. I absolutely agree with you in that. And this part of our city is different from other parts of the city where we've done planning efforts, whether it be through the Neighborhood Planning Initiative or citywide planning efforts or small area planning efforts. These neighborhoods, these 6 neighborhoods, are very unique and deserve the respect that we are trying to bring to this process. And through your conversations, through the insights that you are sharing with us, we are absolutely really working hard to hold those at the core of the work that we're doing. So I wanted to take a moment and speak to some of the items that were sort of mentioned this evening in an effort to advance this conversation, to get us to a place where we can, ideally and hopefully invest continuously in this process and support one another as we move this process forward. So a couple of things, and I'm going to sort of scattershot here, so bear with me. First, the item that was brought up related to implementation. I do want to acknowledge the fact that the implementation chapter is not finished. In fact, now internally we are working on it, but as it's reflected in the plan, that is not our implementation strategy or our implementation content. So there's more to come with that, absolutely, without a doubt. Thinking from an efficiency standpoint, we really did not want to invest a lot of resources in developing a full-fledged implementation section without having yet heard from that broader public. So as we have done in previous planning efforts, and Valerie and I and Cortland, who is here with us this evening, we worked on the very first of the Neighborhood Planning Initiative plans, and we did in fact save the implementation section to the very end once we had gathered and collected community input so that we were reflecting the most current thinking as it relates to implementation. So for those of you who are concerned that the implementation section as well as metrics are not accurately reflected in the plan, that is accurate, that is true, because we have yet to work on that section. So I wanted to make sure to share that with each of you, that section, if it's confusing, we can certainly take it out of the public review process so that we are not inadvertently sending mixed signals to the public. But it is another step in the process that we will get to, because we have to, as a part of the next iteration, once we have hopefully had an opportunity to solicit broader public input. So I wanted to make sure that each of you knew very clearly that that implementation section is not yet complete. So hearing what you're saying and hearing what you have expressed this evening, if it is at all confusing, then perhaps we have an opportunity to make that less so by taking it out, or perhaps asking some additional questions related to it. So that is one sort of, if you will, I don't like these words, but course correction I wanted to share with you. Now, getting back to where Dan sort of left us with sending a signal or talking about the narrative, I do think that one of the unique opportunities with the West Plan is to set a different tone from other parts of the city as what's important to this area. And I do think that we have been attempting to hear you and to listen and to talk about and to express what you've shared with us around quality of life, being a leading and important factor in changing the trajectory of the 6 neighborhoods that make up West. A part of what we do as planners within our capacity within community planning and development, our role is somewhat segmented to land use and transportation. And so we do try to stay in our lane and not overstep other city agencies as it relates to their areas of expertise. So one of the things that we hope that we are capturing is that essence, is that narrative of how the city, as it moves forward and is making future investments and looking at different future projects, how we are leading with what you are sharing with us. So, for example, the Department of Transportation and Infrastructure, DOTI, they are actively looking at the cloverleaf. And we don't necessarily, as CPD, control the story of that infrastructure, because it is a transportation focused piece of infrastructure. What we can do and what we are hoping we are doing, and I'm just using this as an example, is to influence the thinking based off of this community planning effort and process about what values are important to you as it relates to that area within the West. And so we've heard very clearly that stormwater management and drainage, introducing safety and security from those who are walking and rolling and biking, where that tends to be a conflict today. We have opportunities to improve that area and to really truly make it safer for individuals to use and better for our environment. And so I point that out just as an example, in that we are hoping that this plan helps to influence the thinking of other agencies and other departments who are ultimately responsible for what happens with those parts of our city. Same thing with Parks and Recreation. We, through this planning effort, are trying to voice the community's desire for better, higher quality green infrastructure, and to make that the first priority even before development occurs, and looking for opportunities and ways to introduce these publicly shared assets in addition, or before, or while, or through the development process where that will occur. Another thing that I wanted to just make sure that we shared with each of you, and we've talked a lot about this, is directing development where it can be accommodated. So I know, Kathy, you were talking about concerns, and you've been such a great advocate around the concerns of gentrification and displacement, involuntary displacement. And so this plan is attempting to suggest that areas of our West planning area that are not yet developed, like the Cloverleaf, like the Stadium District, and around our transit facilities, are the most appropriate places to absorb any significant amount of growth and development, because right now there aren't communities to disrupt. I mean, bigger picture, yes, we want to be respectful and mindful of the ripple effects of development, but thinking about the Cloverleaf as an opportunity to really funnel development where there's just right now interstate shaped, intersection. So we are really working hard to try to craft and tailor and direct. So it's not just ADUs, that's one small tool in the toolkit. And not everyone will utilize or leverage an accessory dwelling unit. So there's all these components that we're trying to put together in a comprehensive way to really truly talk about that higher level, master planning vision, if you will, at the 6 neighborhood scale, and not necessarily get into the nuances of development at the micro level. While this plan is suggesting where you all have told us things are most appropriate, and that's really at that higher level that we're trying to do, is cast that vision, create that narrative, and really express the values that you all have indicated are important to you as West neighborhood residents and as the area as a whole. So we're really trying to do that. Now, one of the things that has been shared with us over the last few days or a week or so is maybe there's more that we can do to weave in the story of quality of life and addressing some of the past decisions that maybe have led to the conditions that we are working with today. And so in a response or an acknowledgement of that, there are some things that we've talked about doing. For example, our consultant team, OV Consulting, they haven't only been working for West, but they work with Dottie, they work with the Department of Parks and Recreation, and in the West specifically. And as a result of that, over the last year and a half, there's additional information that we've learned that we think, the West team thinks, that we can incorporate into our plan to further that conversation and to further that narrative. And as a result, they have offered to, not offered, they're going to read the plan and like really weigh in through that lens of additional information and to make suggestions on areas that we can beefen up and sort of strengthen with new information that they have learned through these other processes. And so I think that that's an opportunity that we want to definitely take advantage of over the next 6 to 8 weeks to incorporate that thinking into the plan. We also have talked about possibly convening another sort of working group of those of you who really are really strong and passionate around the quality of life aspects of these additional examples that we could maybe weave in to help strengthen the narrative, and not only in the quality of life section, but really throughout the other parts to really make that more of a comprehensive thread that runs through the planning effort. So, and just work with me. While we are seeking additional input from the public, if we can move in that direction, this working group of those of you who are really wanting to see specifics that you've mentioned this evening and over the last few weeks, I think we can create an opportunity for that conversation to occur. So Valerie has been the lead of our quality of life section. She's met with many of you like individually over the last couple of years. And I think that if we were to continue that conversation and look for those specifics that you feel help strengthen that narrative around equity, around quality of life, around some of those enhancements and improvements, I think that is something that we can create the space and opportunity for, so that when we are not only addressing your comments, but also addressing comments from the general public, we can weave that into that next iteration of this plan. So that's another opportunity that we'd like to offer to you and bring up and discuss this evening. So not only do we have additional work and capacity to do with implementation and the metrics related to that, I think we can also do that with the quality of life section as a whole, to really make sure that we are dialing in some of those examples of the emerald necklace and other aspects that you feel advance that conversation. Our supervisor is here, the person who's overseeing all of the Neighborhood Planning Initiative program is Cortland Heiser. And thank you, Cortland, for joining us tonight. But I did want to give you an opportunity because you see all of NPI and you see it as it transpires throughout all of Denver. And I just wanted to see if you had anything you wanted to add to this conversation. And I see your hand, Jean, and we'll get back to you. So if there's anything you'd like to add, Cortland, I wanted to give you that opportunity.
I don't think specifically. I think that the level of conversation, I guess to echo a comment from a few minutes ago, the level of conversation that we're having tonight, I think is like really impressive. I think that a lot of it challenges the conventional planning model. And so, you know, I'm kind of left wondering at this point what, you know, edits to the draft that we have as it is would satisfy, you know, a lot of the concerns that we're hearing tonight, because some of it seems pretty fundamental and could be applied to, you know, most plans, probably, right? So how far away are we on having agreement? Because the, you know, the tone of some of the comments makes it seem pretty far on, you know, if land use planning, you know, is something that is viewed as being, you know, in the realm of the developer and not something that is in the interest of the community, that's a big gulf that we have to bridge. And so I would need to understand that, I guess, a lot better to be able to figure out, you know, what needs to change in this particular plan to get the committee's support. So I think we need, you know, a process for, you know, beyond just the steering committee meeting, for digging into that deeper, probably with a smaller group of people, so there can be more back and forth and less just taking turns, you know, and we'd have to start doing it pretty fast.
Yeah, and one thing too that I wanted to just take a moment, and then I see some hands, and of course I want to get to you all, but one of the things that I feel is really important to point out is that while this is a land use plan that is in the realm of community planning and development and sits within our area of expertise, which is land use, that's what we're responsible for on behalf of the city and its residents. There are some things that I think are a direct result of this work and of your input that are taking shape and informing other city programs. And I think that it's worth taking a moment just to point those out. So for example, we have the general obligation bond work that is taking place along West Colfax that is looking to address pedestrian and transit safety and comfort. While you all as voters, perhaps some of you, if not all of you, voted in favor of that program, that is an example, because even though the citizens voted to approve the bond measure, how that bond measure gets implemented takes next steps. And some of those next steps are a direct result of this planning effort. So, you know, the work that you all have done and that you have shared goes to the Department of Transportation and Infrastructure and helps direct and guide those programs that they are doing with your voting money. Another example of that is the Neighborhood Transportation Management Program, which has already implemented some safety measures, primarily focused in the western side of West Colfax in the Jewish community, because we heard loud and clear through this process that there were some opportunities to address safety and comfort. And those interventions, some of them have taken place and have already been implemented, and some of them are in the works. You know, another huge, I think, win for Denver is and I think Kathy, you might have mentioned this, The federal funding, I think it's $350 million that has been awarded to Denver to look at the entire South Platte River in our jurisdiction. So 6 miles of the river has received funding, I think in part because through our efforts in planning, we have indicated that that is a important priority area for us. So it's not necessarily as a direct result of the West Plan, but the energy and the effort that's coming from community, I think, has definitely gone into informing our ask for those grant funds, and we won. Another example related to that is an announcement that I think just took place last week with, and Kathy, hopefully this is one will resonate with you, is the Federal Boulevard Brownfields funding. We have $500,000 that's been granted to the city and county of Denver for Federal Boulevard to look at brownfield remediation. And early on, 2 years ago, this team had conversations with the other city agency, DEDO, the Department of Economic Development and Opportunity, who wanted to understand what is the community in West saying, because we think that Federal Boulevard is a good candidate for us as a city to go after those funds. And so we shared information with that group based off of what you all were sharing with us. And lo and behold, we've been successful in securing those funds. So I say those examples and share them with you to hopefully communicate to you that while you may have some concerns and comments related to the current iteration of the draft, the work that you all have done and the input that you have given is being shared with other city agencies and is leading to implementation steps and some level of success in addressing some of those issues that you all have raised. And so I just share that with you to hopefully demonstrate that, yes, the West Plan is your plan and is being crafted and directed by each of you. And it's also resulting in action, even before it's adopted. So while you may have some concerns around how this current draft is expressing what you've shared with us, it is also resulting in action. And I think resulting in forward momentum in the areas that you all are very passionate about. So I hope that you see your work actually making a difference right now, even before it's adopted. So I would like to think that we can continue working with each of you and honing in on that message, honing in on the narrative that will continue this level of success in making interventions in the areas that you feel are important. So I'm going to stop talking with that. I think the first hand I saw was Kathy's, then Jean's, and then we'll go to Heidi.
I think I'll defer to her.
It was, and then we've got lots of comments in the chat as well, Eugene. I don't know how we want to make space for those, but just a heads up.
Yeah, I cannot see the chat, so if you can help me out with that, that would be great. So Kathy, you first.
Okay. I was trying to pass it to you, Jean. I hear you, and I see that you're providing us these different ticket receipts of what you think has been moved forward into actual concrete examples of how things can change. And I would agree with Elizabeth that we really need to see that interwoven into those implementation pieces and metrics so that we are not, I guess, how can I put it? The proof is sort of in the documentation, in the writing of it, since we're always really keen on what's written is what gets heard. We need to see that reflected. I appreciate you sharing that, but in some ways, it doesn't make any difference if I really don't see it documented and tied to this plan. And so that is the piece I think that needs to really be unwoven. And when you stated earlier that there's other departments that handle different sections of the plan, I'm confused on really if you are able to influence it or if we are not in alignment with some of those other departments because they're deciding maybe a different way. So, you know, it's unclear to me if we express the threat of quality of life throughout this whole plan and it gets a bump in the road because mobility has to deal with Dottie, and Dottie isn't in agreement with what we're saying in this plan, that it won't happen. So I think we really need to see that the actual plan demonstrates. And that's what I was hoping what was going to happen when we left on April 9th, that we were going to get together and really see how it was changed. But instead what we saw is that the plan was going to go out and unfold to the public without even seeing if really the changes were made. We went online to see what changes were made, and we saw more cut and paste. So I guess what I would say is that the history and patterns that's community planning and permitting haven't been reassuring to show us that you're really going to follow through on this narrative change. I am appreciative and open certainly to being a part of that narrative discussion so that we can tighten that gulf and that we have a narrative that resonates with these neighborhoods. But again, that track record doesn't seem to be showing up as documentation in a sense that you're really hearing us and writing it down and changing it. All we're sort of seeing is cut and paste. So I would implore you to really make that next jump where we can actually see it integrated into this plan.
All right. Awesome. Thank you for that. One of the things, just in response to that very last statement, one of the things that we were planning for our June meeting and on June 28th is to show you, both you, the steering committee, but the general public as a whole, how we are responding to that feedback. You know, one of the benefits of using, and I know it doesn't work for everyone, so we acknowledge that. But one of the ways that Conveo, the platform that we are using for the interactive component, it allows us to pull reports, like literally the comments that are being made. And one of the things that we've talked about doing is showing how we received input, what we did with it, so that we can share that in full transparency with those who are making those comments and suggestions. So it is absolutely on our radar to show you how we are responding to the feedback. And we are hoping that you will allow us the opportunity to solicit feedback from the broader public in addition to what you've already shared with us, so that we can do that in an efficient manner over the next coming weeks. So I'll just stop there, and I want to turn things over to Jean, and then we'll go to Heidi.
Oh, Jean, you're on mute.
I'll try to make this really quick. Thank you. I guess listening to this and all of these opportunities and ideas and all of that, it says you kind of get it. You kind of get what we're talking about. But here's the disconnect for me is, so write the damn thing. You know, we can either do it now or we can do it later. And by not doing it now, what that puts me in a position is to have our RNO meeting on June 1st and go back and say, hey, wow, there's been a lot of discussion, but this plan draft, it doesn't really reflect what we want to see on the other side. And then I have to come up with a whole list of reasons why, you know, that doesn't, you know, and have this whole big discussion and have people going down a rabbit hole, you know, when they're already got a million other things that we hope to get to anyway. And so if we're going to get there anyway, let's get there now. This is not about taking, you know, the details of when I sat through other plans, like, oh, do we do 3 blocks of upzoning, you know, along Colfax, or do we just do, you know, 2 blocks? Or how, you know, it's not that kind of level of detail. And so for me, because the tone of it has not yet been completely expressed and integrated, it just puts it in a whole nother place in terms of getting community input and how I would have to portray this plan at this time, to the community. It's not just about, hey, do you think we should, look at the bike lane there, the bike facility? Is that what you really want on Decatur or not? It's not that level of detail. We're talking about something pretty substantive. And I agree, it's a very difficult thing to write by committee, and I certainly don't have to be part of that. It could be 2 or 3 people. And, I really trust, that we are pretty all aligned with, that kind of vision, and that there's only a few, there's a few people that can do the speaking, for the larger group. And I'm fine with that. I just feel that and I kind of understand what you're talking about. Let's keep the process going. Let's give people the opportunity and that we'll weigh it in. But what I'm hearing and feeling right now is that this is not just about a tweaking. This is not just about, asking for additional kind of ideas or comments. This is about me going back and selling a plan that doesn't completely reflect what we've been sitting here all tonight talking about what the end product is going to look like. So while I know it's cumbersome, I do think that we still need this little bit of effort. And it's not a little bit. I know it's a lot of effort, and I won't deny it. It's kind of mind-boggling to me to integrate anything, but there are people that do that well. That's why you guys are planners. I think we just need to do this first, and I really, really feel strongly about that.
Thank you for that, Jean. I appreciate that. Heidi.
I kind of had a sense that Kathy and Jean were going to touch on everything that, I that's basically what I wanted to say too, that I think it's great to hear that we do need to do the deep dive, and we do need to get this in a place where, even if people did understand the plan, I don't think they're going to understand how to provide feedback. I got 3 pages into it and I was like, I can't do this, that process. And there's only really ways to do this, to respond via the internet. I know there's talk one-on-one with the planner, but I don't know how, I don't know. So I agree with they're saying, and I just want to just wholeheartedly 100%. Yeah.
Thank you for that. I see, and I apologize if I get this wrong. Is it Paola? Paola?
It's Paola Bab with DDPHE.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Paola.
Yeah, thank you. I was just wanting to ask a question. So I keep hearing folks, the steering committee, kind of tell city planning, you need to write this, you need to reflect this. I know I had talked with Val a while back prior to this being released to the public, on wanting to host community forums where we really break it down for folks, and then on the spot really write through their voice what they wanted to see, and then provide that as comments, full on writing, this is what you need to edit, this is exactly how it should be written and stuff. Can we not do that? Because I don't know, from this conversation I'm getting it that that's on city planning, that they should write it, but it was to my understanding that we, or the public, could really just break things down, rewrite things in the way that they want it, really call out what's missing and comment in that way. Is that not allowed when it goes to public comment? Does it have to go through city planning? Or maybe I'm not just understanding the process?
That's a great question, and I'm going to offer an answer in this way. And of course, Cortland, correct me if I get anything wrong or off base, but really hearing the sentiment from the public and then taking that information, whether it's, individuals who are wanting to give us actual text to work with, is great, but we don't have an expectation that people are going to literally write words for us, because what we need to do is take the input that we receive, and our job, at least in part, is to think about all of the different users of this plan. So it's the public, for sure, there's the private sector, which is often developers, designers, architects, landscape architects, and how they are interpreting that input and feedback. But in addition to that, it's also our other city agencies. So Parks and Recreation, Department of Transportation and Infrastructure, DDPHE, and what you see as opportunities to take what this community has shared and turning that into projects or programs that are looking to address some of the issues that the community is concerned with. It's our forestry department. It's our stormwater management group. It's our engineers. So, and really when they see that this area needs a sidewalk or needs trees and a way to manage the stormwater runoff, and where do we have these heat islands, and where are there impervious surfaces that we need to rethink and reimagine and to make greener and healthier and more functional as it relates to the health of our city and leading to an improved quality of life. So we have to think about all of these different audiences and writing content in a way that communicates that narrative, communicates that vision, so that they know how to pick up the ball where we leave it and advance the conversation even further. So I do think that we as a group and we as a plan writing entity have to think about not only your needs and your visions and aspirations for your future, but how people might take that information and interpret it into actual projects or decision making. So it's a balance. It's all of those things, which makes it hugely challenging. But for me personally, as a human being, it's why I really, truly love this work, because I want to do everything that I can, just Eugene, private citizen, and Eugene, the planning professional, to reflect what we are hearing from you, so that when those future decisions are being made and those future projects are being developed, that they are being done with your vision as the foundation. So the plan, this plan, the West Area Plan, or any neighborhood planning plan coming out of CPD, isn't necessarily meant to be the final stop, but is actually meant to be the beginning of a conversation, the starting point, the sort of point at which information is considered and factored in to move these conversations forward. We've seen that play out in the far Northeast. We're seeing it play out to some degree in East and East Central. We're seeing it play out around the city as it relates to Blueprint Denver. I think it's in part why Councilwoman Torres felt comfortable moving forward accessory dwelling units in the parts of her district that did not have that allowance. And it's because of the conversations that were started by Renee Martinez Stone and the West Denver Renaissance Collaborative, and what you all have also shared with us about a tool in the toolkit to help address our housing needs. So I just really hope that you all see the opportunity that the West Plan and this effort isn't the end of the story, but really truly the start of many, many stories that are going to advance the things, the vision, the priorities that are so important to each of you. So I do believe that, or else I wouldn't do this work. And I mean that sincerely. So I want to, let's see, we're going to keep the conversation going. I don't know, Heidi, if that's your previous hand or a new one, but I do want to recognize Sean. I want to go to Sean first, Elizabeth, because you've spoken. Sean has got his hand up. I want to get Sean in, and then we'll come back to you, Elizabeth. Sean.
We talked a bit a few days ago, and of a few of us, and the two issues that came up the most, I think that kind of resonate with me. There was others, some of them have been spoken about before today, are that gentrification issue, the displacement issue, and how to solve that. And also, actually wasn't spoken about much by other people, but the industrial areas and what I call jobs versus the environment and environmental damage. And we've talked about these issues a bit, but I feel like as a group, as a bigger group, we haven't done the deep dive. We haven't had the difficult conversations about some of these topics and the trade-offs. What perhaps like are the solutions to gentrification and displacement and how to avoid that? I don't quite know. And it's been a long process. We've talked a lot. And I think these are very difficult issues. I don't know if there's any academic papers about this and information, but I don't know if, as Kathy says, upzoning is the problem, and we avoid that, we'll avoid the problems. Or there's other ways. I really don't know. I feel like I'm naive on these issues. I'm just a regular person. I don't have any specialty in this, and we probably have discussed this. Maybe it went over my head. Maybe I forgot. But if we're going to do a deep dive, I think those are a couple of issues I think that would be prime for a deep dive onto.
All right, thank you for that. And you know, gentrification and displacement, involuntary displacement are certainly huge issues for our city and really around the world, literally. So many cities are grappling with the desire of people to return to or seek out our urban environments, and how do we accommodate people who want to be in our cities. It's a challenge, that's for sure. I do think that Denver is really working hard to look at creative ways to address those issues. There is no magic bullet, of course, but we are actively looking at ways that we can address those needs, including providing funding for first-time home buyers. I don't know if you all have been following that, but we've created a program where we are literally offering financial support to those first-time home buyers to help them get into a home for the very first time. So, and I think it was maybe even last week where we awarded some funding to the first qualifying, I don't know if it's a couple or a family, to try to help keep people in our neighborhoods or in our city. So it's a big thing. We're working on it. Just know that is happening at the city, and it's not coming out of planning. It's really coming out of some of our other city agencies. So I see Elizabeth's hand, and then I want to be mindful of our time. We're getting close to our time, and I do want to revisit the opportunity to convene this working group that maybe can help articulate the comments that have been expressed tonight around how we can continue advancing that narrative. So, Elizabeth, if you can give us a
concise, yeah,
yeah,
I'm going to try. I'm going to be rarely, yeah. One, thank you everybody for being here and for putting all of the heart and intellect and attention into all of this. And I really deeply believe that this is going to be a plan that really makes a difference for our communities, but also a landmark plan for a plan that's coming out of a pandemic period where we really had to question our assumptions about what development is, resilience of whom, for what. And we're having those conversations and we're making concrete recommendations, and we couldn't have had a better planning team. We are so exceptionally fortunate. And I think like the flyers went out, like I was surprised. I was like, oh, honey, I think we've got a postponement. And he's like, oh, I hadn't heard about the Wisteria plan, but here's a flyer. I'm like, oh, but that went out, and like, so we can start having conversations, and some people may be checking it out. It does concern me about a plan that will be updated a bit. It's confusing, and I'm all of the stuff Jean said, like that's a concern. But since those flyers are there, but I think waiting on the press release a little bit till we've had a conversation with whatever this working group is. I also had posted in the chat that I think at the last WDRC CLC meeting, Renee was asked the steering committee members who were there, what can we do to help? Renee was like, I've stayed back and stepped back because I wanted the neighbors and the steering committee to really be able to think through that and be of support. And so we're like, well, we're waiting to hear back, but it would be awesome as a next step to have that larger West area expanded group and set of folks look at that, since the conversations are aligned there too. It would be wonderful. The NEST folks were at that meeting. It would be wonderful to have NEST. It would be wonderful to have CASR, since CASR is doing planning out an intense process for Villa Park, Valverde, and West Colfax, having already done those meetings with Sun Valley. And we're looking at how we can integrate those meetings across our 3 neighborhoods in a way that lowers the burden on us, but also helps integrate feedback for the West Area Plan. So that could be a conversation about next steps to be able to, in a more to be able to look at the gentrification and climate change issues that are brought together with that NEST CASR connection. So I think that there are ways to move forward where it's not just the steering committee holding on to the plan really tightly, but being intentional so that we don't confuse and overwhelm and scatter with a haphazardly rolled out public process that ends up leaving people more burned out and confused. So I don't know fully what those next steps are, and I'd hoped maybe we would have agreement here, but and that's not quite there, but I think some great ideas have been surfaced about a rollout that can honor the deep relationships and reciprocity that's been throughout this process. Eugene and Val and the rest of the planning team here, and Paola bringing in the food work. There's such great, this hasn't been an antagonistic process. These have been really thoughtful, asking really hard, challenging questions. And I'm sorry, my Buffalo neighborhoods, I'm sorry. Anyway, sorry. Where are we on the clock of the world matters.
Thank you for that, Elizabeth. And you're absolutely right. So many of you have put so much time and effort into this process to make a meaningful difference. And we respect that entirely, absolutely, without a doubt. And we hope that we can continue to advance these conversations. And your comment about DDPHE and others taking this even further is really what I believe is the benefit and the beauty of the work that you all have done, because it doesn't just sit with us in CPD, community planning and development. The work that we do here does impact and inspire the other agencies to move things forward. And so I hope all of you can see that this is literally the foundation for future work. It's not the end all be all, it's the start. And it's capturing that essence and capturing the values that you all share in order to advance the conversations with others and other agencies and other projects. So I know we may not get it perfect. We may not get everything in there the way that each of you would like to imagine it to be. And it's the start. It's only the start of future and additional conversations that will move the needle in a meaningful way and move it forward. I absolutely believe that wholeheartedly. And so I do think that we should, and this is just my ask of you, I do think that we need to get the broader community's input. I think we need to understand how others see this work, not only to respond to feedback and comments that we get, but to marry that with what you all are sharing with us. So, because again, you all have been here, you come every month, you hear, and you've been in the sausage making, you've been there putting in the ingredients one step at a time. But there are others that haven't been as engaged as each of you have been. And we need to, it's our responsibility, quite frankly, to hear what other people are thinking about where we are in order to help inform the whole process. And yes, we worked with our council members to put together a flyer. I was not expecting it to go out as early as it started. I thought that that process might only happen on Monday, starting Monday, but it did get out ahead of us. And so to some degree, there is a desire from the broader community, individuals who have received the flyer, to see what this group has been up to see kind of what is currently in the draft. And it's only a draft. We have opportunities to continue crafting it. But much like anything that anyone writes, you have a first version and then you work on it, you share it, you get edits, you make changes to it. And that's kind of where we are. And we really want to continue this conversation and continue developing the plan. And we really do need the opportunity to hear from others about their take on it, because you all are providing great guidance and input and direction. And we also need to hear how others see it, those who are not as engaged as each of you have been. That's kind of where we are. I see your hand, Valerie, and I also want to turn things over to Cortland, maybe for some closing words, and maybe see where we are collectively, and if we can move forward with that broader share with the community so that we can continue to move things forward. So I don't know, Valerie, if you have something quick you want to share, and then I do want to turn things over to Cortland, maybe to kind of give us a wrap up or some perspective as far as next steps and what you think we as a department need to do and we as a planning team need to do to kind of keep things moving. So, Valerie?
I don't need to share my voice right now, Eugene. It's okay. Let's go ahead and skip over to get to Cortland. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, there was some discussion there at the end, where Elizabeth, I think you were the one that was saying, we need to be intentional about how we have these discussions and how the plan gets rolled out. And, Eugene, I'm wondering if maybe you shouldn't share, an overview of, what we were planning to do for the rollout. And that might be a good way to wrap things up so that people can see that there is intentional thinking behind it, and that we do have a lot, in the works. So it's not just put it on the website and wait 6 weeks, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Is the group familiar with that?
We saw the email with the description, and it sounded more like it's a catch-all and people are interested to be able to come in. My concern on a big push when the plan seems like there's pieces that are if I were a general member of the public who isn't as invested in this process and not familiar with planning documents, being confronted with a 280-page plan is overwhelming. And if it was difficult, if there were readability issues that were challenging for those of us who are intimately familiar with the content, just confused by the structure and the organization. I can't imagine being someone who maybe has challenges with English or just challenges reading and interpreting a lot. We've got a lot of systems thinkers in this steering committee, an incredible capacity to connect the dots. And even we had a hard time reading it. So I'm just trying to think of it's much easier to have some of the feedback brought in instead of sharing something that doesn't feel coherent and has tons of comments that other people have posted on there already, or stuff that is conversation outside. It's just for the general public, it seems like a difficult, what I was thinking was more being able to, there are folks who are deeply engaged with these issues and thinking about it from this interconnected way, people who are thinking about, oh, if we put bike lines here or have this transportation improvement and improve this green space, how do we need a plan for affordable housing in those areas so that that doesn't just lead to green gentrification? Like there are people who are thinking in those ways and spaces and taking it as a next level from this tight steering committee out to those spaces and bringing it into some of those like guided public processes that help build spaces where people can process it together. That feels smart. Like we have these outreach, like if CPD were engaged somehow with our CASR series of meetings that are coming up, that may be a good way to have a engagement approach that's building connection and not overwhelming or confusing people. And great, like if people are really excited about it and they've been wanting to know what's going on and they got the flyer and they look, like great, like if there's a way to be able to, if they post it and we can bring them into the conversation and capture those for more focused dialogue, I think that's helpful. But putting a big push to get lots of feedback right now when the plan seems confusing and not having incorporated the changes, it's hard. But we did, but to Cortland, Eugene sent us very thoughtful email with all that was planned for outreach, but it felt like a big push that's broad and not necessarily like tailored and focused. So anyway, that's just,
Yeah,
I'm concerned about how it will land for the average neighbor.
Yeah, so keeping my eye on the time, I do want to sort of speak into that. We have attempted to set up a variety of different ways for people to engage with the plan, in addition to having it available online for those who feel comfortable and maybe are computer savvy and don't have concerns around accessing information, on their own. That is one avenue. But the office hours where people who maybe do visit the website or don't want to and just really want to know what's contained in the plan and they want to have a conversation with us, we've provided that opportunity and ways for people to sign up for a time and an hour to like meet with us. They can do it multiple times. We want to make sure that we as a team are making ourselves available to do that one-on-one or small group interaction. We also have created an overview presentation that is meant to sort of walk an individual through the high level. Where did we start from? How did we get here? What's in the plan? Where did it come from? How is this plan attempting to address big high level issues? And provide the opportunity for people to continue to inform and guide and direct what they think and what they see in what we are asking for feedback on. We are wanting to go out to registered neighborhood organizations, other nonprofit organizations, partner with CASR, partner with DPR and Dottie when they are going to meetings. I attend a number of meetings every month that aren't planning related meetings. I go to the Sun Valley Community Action Committee. I'm participating on the Dottie Community Action Committee. So there's ways that we are trying to make sure that we are present and are able to field and address issues. We've got this great partnership with Colorado Jobs with Justice. And their outreach that they did in partnership with us last year and the opportunity to go back to their membership, hardworking residents in West and share with them the current, iteration of content. So we do have ways, and those are just a sample, that's not all, but those are ways that we are wanting to do exactly what you mentioned, Elizabeth, and that is engage with people in the ways that are meaningful to them at the degree that they are interested, and doing that in English and in Spanish. So we're really wanting to do that engagement in a variety of different ways at different touch points at the level of comfort that individuals are wanting to engage with us. So I see some hands and I do want to try to wrap this up because we're 15 minutes over and I don't want to take any more of your time than we need to. So I see Katie, and you haven't spoken yet, so I do want to go with you, and then we'll go back to Kathy and Heidi. Oh, you're on mute, Katie. You know, Zoom.
Eugene, Katie just said she'll write it in the chat. I think she's having trouble with Mike. And Eugene, now you're on mute, and I think you were talking.
Of course, there's, you know, so I said, let's go to Kathy, and then we'll go to Heidi, and we'll try to wrap things up.
Yeah, to me, I think that the concrete ask from these neighborhoods is to really see the quality of life component integrated into this plan before it is launched through that whole public process, because then that's sending a real clear message of what the narrative is of this area plan. So I would hope that we could look at that and move in that direction. And it may not take more than 6 weeks to do, maybe less, depending on how quickly we can get together. I like Cortland's idea of having a smaller group kind of work on that narrative so that we're on the same page. So I would encourage us moving in that direction as the ask, and then doing the launch that you're proposing, because then we'll have much more of a comprehensive plan. My hope is after that.
All right, thank you. Heidi.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm just I'm having a really hard time with this. I'm really confused, I guess, or just frustrated, because I feel like you were saying, I mean, I know I'm saying that we can't support a plan that it's not there, and it's when it seems really inconsistent if we're saying that we're going to do a deep dive while we're bringing it out to the public. It doesn't feel to me like that. It feels to me like we're still not being listened to, and it feels like we're being kind of placated and maybe a little gaslit. And I got to say that, because I'm really frustrated with the process, and I don't know how we're going to get in front of an RNO and support something that it's not there. And so I just need to say that. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, maybe I haven't expressed this explicitly, but this desire to get additional public or start the public input process is to do just that, get some initial public feedback on the content that does exist. But it's not the only time. So with additional refinements, with input that we want to receive from the general public, and the opportunity to see and address and respond to that input as well, will result in another iteration of this plan, and going back out to the public again, showing how that input has been reflected in a new second draft of this plan. So I did not express that this won't be the only time that the public gets to see this work, but it's their first time to see it. And then we respond to that, and we come back out with a new and enhanced, revised version. So I do want to make sure that that is clear, that this isn't the one and only time that the public gets to see it, but it's the first time. And again, you all have been through this process really from the very beginning, but there are members of the public that haven't seen anything from us in quite some time. And that is a part of the motivation behind getting something out, to get a response to it, so that we can continue that conversation, that dialogue, and show you, the steering committee, how we've responded to your input, but also be able to do that with the public as a whole. It's a matter of wanting to do that in the most meaningful way, so that we are demonstrating to the public not only what you have shared with us, but also what we've heard from them, so that in that July, perhaps August timeframe, we go back out with another big sort of push, a big sort of conversation with the public on how we have in fact responded to what they've shared with us. But we are at a point, and I'm just going to be really frank, where we need to get that input so that we can continue moving this forward in the sense of showing how we do in fact respond. Because even if we were to take time and address your steering committee feedback, we still would have to do that public process and then demonstrate how we respond to that. So we're trying to, or I will own it. I'm trying to do that in one moment, so that when we do then go back out, we not only are showing you, but we are also showing the public how we have responded to input. Because, you know, we're 3 years into this, and to do it in an iterative standpoint is really expanding that time frame. And we really want to be mindful of how much we are asking of you, volunteers who are here unpaid because you care about your communities. And so that is why we really want to get that input now, so that we can have the opportunity to respond to it and then come back in 8 weeks and have that next conversation. So that is a part of our ask. And so I hear you in that you don't have that comfort level yet, but I think that there are opportunities for us to work with you, like in this working group component, while we are hearing for the first time from the public as a whole, marry those two opportunities together on what we hear and how we respond to it, so that when we come back out, we are hopefully doing that to your satisfaction as well as to the broader community satisfaction, versus doing it one after the other. So that's a part of the process that we would have to do. And that's why we are, or I am, as a project manager, wanting to have this moment and have this conversation about sharing with you how we want to not only get that feedback, but what we're doing with yours. And that is having this working group that can really get in on that narrative. And we can talk a little bit more about that, you know, maybe offline or through email, because we do have those of you who we believe are really passionate around this topic, that we can set up those opportunities for further dialogue, while we are also then, as I've mentioned now several times, getting the broader input from the general public to marry those two things together. So that is my ask of you, because again, this won't be the only time that the public gets to see this plan and to weigh in on it. So we are now 20 minutes over schedule. I don't know if there's anything, Cortland, you want to add before we close, but I do think that next steps could involve reaching out to those of you who would like to be a part of this working group to help sort of refine and enhance the quality of life conversation and narrative. And we can do that, you know, in the next coming days before this week is over. Reach out to each of you, talk about a time that would work, that we can continue having that conversation. And I will probably, Valerie, let you, as the quality of life lead, reach out to those that you've been in conversations with over the last 2 years to arrange that conversation, and then we kind of go from there. And we do want to have our next meeting on a week later, June 28th. And with the hope that we can share with you what we've learned from the public, from a public release. We did pull that, by the way. I don't know if you know that or not, but when we knew that we wanted to hold this meeting, we actually pulled down the public review draft. So it has not been up since, I believe, Thursday or Friday of last week. And I've actually received messages, a few sort of grumpy messages from people who were wanting to go and see but the site wasn't available. So I do think that it would be in the process best interest to put that back out now that the flyers have gone out, and I don't control that. Unfortunately, I could not pull that back, but it would be great to at least offer the ability for people to see, read, and respond to the draft so that we can continue having this conversation and show and share how we are responding to that feedback. So I don't know, Cortland, if there's any sort of position that we have as a department on moving forward or reposting the public review draft, but it is not currently accessible. And I do think that we have an opportunity to make that available, even if we don't do a big, huge media push. But I do think that we need to continue moving forward with getting additional input.
Yeah, I think you've said it already, but you know, the flyers are going out, people are seeing them, they go to the website and the plan isn't there and they're voicing their frustration, right? And that's the reality. The more people that see the flyer, that go to check out the plan and it isn't there, they may not come back, right? And it's a big concern that taking the time to work just with the steering committee and withholding that opportunity from the public, we might lose people who won't come back later. And so that's, just trying to be as plain as you were, Eugene. That's the reality of our situation. And a big reason why we think we have to try to do it at the same time. That it's not ideal to do it that way, but that's the situation that we have. And so we have to do both, we think. Otherwise, community may give up on us while they're waiting the steering committee. So let's do the working group. Let's get the public input on what we have. We'll have to take it all in and, update the plan, right? And
so could I make a request?
There's still time to deal with the feedback that we get.
Could I think it's important not to alienate people with a link that doesn't work. The flyers have gone out. I don't know how many people are going to go there, but I think that there's also a way, there's a landing page that link goes to, and whatever the document is that goes to that link, if it could be adjusted to be able to name, I don't know what the statement is, and if there's a way to be able to track who some of the folks are who are really interested and who are jumping into it. I don't know if there's a way to be able to track sort any of those comments by time to share with the steering committee who the new voices are that want to be part of that process. But I don't think it's going to be, without a big public extra push, I don't think that the flyers are going to have tons of people swarming to the website. And I do think that it's out, and there's a big risk of losing social capital and trust if there's not, and none of us want that. We all want a strong public engagement process for a plan that people can buy into. And that is exactly why we're concerned about a big release when it's not ready to be shared, and it's going to be confusing and it doesn't hold the narrative, and there's more that could be done. I think being able to bring us into the planning of what makes sense for that outreach too, does make sense. And I don't have all answers, but it seems like there's a way to be able to manage the flyer having gone out and people going there that.
Yeah, I was going to say we're in consultation with our 3 council districts. We have flyers going out to 9,500 residential households. I've already heard from at least 10 people their frustration of trying to go and see the work that this group has been doing and not being able to see it. Before this conversation, I did receive about 2 or 3 messages from people who had the opportunity to go and see the plan. And those responses were positive. They were people who were excited to see that the city was paying attention to their community and that they were excited about the fact that we were doing this work. So I think that continuing to gauge community input would be great. And I think we will have an opportunity to share how changes have occurred, where they're coming from. To your point, Elizabeth, yes, I do think that we are able to track in the downloads of information who's coming in and when they're coming in. We don't know who they are unless they self-identify. But I think that to move this process and keep it going and to get us to a place where everyone sees their work and their feedback reflected, we need to move this process forward. We need to continue. And it is not the end, it's the start of that conversation. And for many people, it will be the very first time that they are even aware of this, even though you all have been at this for 2.5 years. So I do think that there is value in not alienating people like we have with at least the 10 people that have reached out to me personally to say voice their frustration. And I worry very much about that issue. So I think we have an opportunity to address it. We can turn the switch back on. We can allow folks to share what they want to share with us and continue developing the plan. This is a first draft. So we're not done. We have more work that we need to do to fill out some of those missing pieces. And I think we have an opportunity to respond to people and to share where we actually are in the process to continue advancing this very critical and important work that all of you have invested so much of your time and effort into. And we all of us want to see this be successful. And I know we will get there. I absolutely believe it. And we just need to keep moving in the direction of making sure that we are doing just that, creating a plan that everyone can see a reflection of the future that the city and the private sector will be responsible for creating. So I want to stop with that. It's now 8 o'clock.
Eugene, before you end very quickly, you've got a suggestion. I wonder if this resonates with folks. Jaime in the chat says, I suggest that we can keep this open as a quote soft launch and integrate a community outreach understanding and accessibility to push to larger public media in person. Might put you back a few weeks, but it allows time. We got a thumbs up from Elizabeth on that one. And then Elizabeth replied, yes, let the flyers actually connect them to the draft. And I don't think the website needs to broadcast it. And Katie had a comment too. Katie, if you want to unmute yourself and quickly share.
And I also see Councilman Clark here. So Councilman, if you'd like to close this out, thank you for listening for the last 2 hours. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank everyone for their participation. And I just wanted to make sure I knew you had said earlier you couldn't see the chat, and I wanted to flag that because it seemed like people were kind of coming together. So beat me to it. Just wanted to make sure that we were seeing what was going on in the chat in terms of soft launch, letting the flyers connect, but continuing this conversation about a big push with this to try to resolve some of these things.
I think that's a good. I think that's a good compromise. Maybe we don't do a huge big push now, but we do that after we have responded to and reflected the feedback that you all want to share. But I do think the soft launch allows us to engage with our community members, get that additional input that will continue this conversation. So if that is a sentiment that I don't see in the chat because I'm looking at each of you, then I think that is a good next step that we can take.
And I would like to request more precisely from what I'd asked before, that as this new input comes in from people who are beyond the steering committee, that the steering committee can have reports back around what's been heard from the summary of what these comments are, who has been responding, so that we have a better understanding of who cared enough to take a flyer and follow the QR code and like jump on, and
Absolutely.
where they are, so that those are folks that we can also more directly engage going forward.
I won't be able to share personal identifying information because that violates
But
our
that's not
city
all of the
policy. but-
comments on there have personal identifying information. I had to have my name posted on every single comment that I put on every single thing. I had to type my same name like every time I posted a comment. So
Yeah.
it is identified. I just don't want to be the one responsible for sorting through all of those comments. It is
Yeah.
public. You can't make an anonymous comment on the draft.
That's
So
right. That's right. But I don't want to necessarily commit to sharing like email addresses or phone numbers, things like that. Names, you're right. That is a part of that public review process. And there's no reason for us not to share the spreadsheet, the feedback. We want you to see. Like there's no benefit in us not sharing that information with you, because I want you to see what people are saying so that we know how, as a collective group, to respond to that. So. I personally, unless Cortland or Councilman, if there's something that I'm not realizing in that, I think that that's completely fine and acceptable. So that's not an issue. All right, my computer is about to die.
thank you, everybody.
It's 8:03. And I just really appreciate everyone's energy and enthusiasm around this. So I'm hearing, let's do the soft launch. Let's turn the site back on so we don't lose any more people. And we'll continue to have this dialogue. I will share with you, and then I will say the next 2 to 3 weeks, kind of what we're hearing once we get things turned back on. And we'll kind of go from there. In the meantime, however, I think even with what's left of this week, we can reach out to this group and see who would be interested in participating in that smaller working group, and we can get that conversation going now. So that's what I'm hearing. Let's proceed with that if everyone's okay. And I would love to thank you for the additional half an hour of the hour and a half that you've given us tonight. And really, truly appreciate everyone's passion and energy and enthusiasm on behalf of your neighborhoods, and just can't thank you enough. So I appreciate that.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
More
Have a
to
good
come.
evening.